Passive voice. The passive voice serves several purposes in writing and communication. Emphasis on the action or result. The passive voice highlights the action itself or the outcome rather than the doer of the action. This can be useful when the action is more important than who performed it. For example, the novel was written in 1920, focuses on the novel and the year rather than the author. Unknown or irrelevant agent. In cases where the doer of the action is unknown, unimportant, or obvious, the passive voice allows the speaker or writer to omit the agent. For instance, the cake was eaten does not specify who ate the cake, which might be irrelevant to the context. Objectivity and formality. The passive voice can lend an objective and formal tone to writing, which is often preferred in academic and technical contexts. It can make statements feel more impersonal and less biased. For example, the experiment was conducted to analyze the data sounds more formal than we conducted the experiment. Focus on the receiver of the action. In some cases, the passive voice is used to draw attention to the recipient of the action. For instance, the letter was received by the manager emphasizes the manager receiving the letter rather than who sent it. Variation in sentence structure. The passive voice can provide variety in sentence structure, helping to create a more dynamic writing style. This can keep the reader engaged, especially in longer pieces of writing. For example, the chef prepared a delicious meal that evening. The meal was served to the guests with great care. As they tasted each course, the flavors were celebrated and the meal was praised for its presentation and taste. In this paragraph, the switch to passive voice in the second and third sentences provides a change in rhythm and focus, making the writing more interesting. In a longer paragraph, you might begin with an active voice sentence to introduce the main subject, then switch to passive voice in the following sentences to keep the focus on the action or result rather than the doers. This variation can enhance the overall rhythm and readability of the text. Overall, the use of passive voice can be a strategic choice depending on the context, audience, and desired effect of the communication. Examples: 70 of the 90 surviving Aboriginal languages in Australia were no longer in common usage amongst native people. Here, the focus is on the languages, the object, rather than who stopped using them. Only 20 out of the 175 Native American languages remain in use, the rest being functionally extinct. This sentence highlights the status of the languages rather than the actions of their speakers. The right to speak one's own language and celebrate one's own culture is a fundamental human right. This sentence uses the passive construction to stress the concept of the right rather than the actors enforcing it. The efforts contribute to prolonging the survival of these languages, allowing linguists more time to record and study them before they disappear. Although this sentence is mainly active, the allowing can serve as a subtle shift into passive when discussing the effects of the efforts on linguists. A multimedia archive has recently been created at the Max Planck Institute for Psycholinguistics in the Netherlands. This construction emphasizes the creation of the archive instead of who created it. The suppression or loss of a language can be seen as a violation of this right. The focus is on the suppression or loss being a violation rather than stating who is doing the suppressing. Efforts to document them through recordings, dictionaries and syntaxes which can help preserve them for future generations. This sentence shifts the focus towards the efforts themselves rather than the individuals making those efforts.